I hear the sound of words, their sense the air dissolves unjointed ere it reach my ear. He speaks, let us draw nigh, matchless in might, the glory late of Israel, now the grief. We come thy friends and neighbors not unknown from Eshtaol and Zorah's fruitful vale, to visit or bewail thee, or if better counsel or consolation we may bring, salve to thy sores, apt words have power to assuage the tumors of a troubled mind, and are as balm to festered wounds. Your coming, friends, revives me, for I learn now of my own experience, not by talk, how counterfeit a coin they are who friends bear in their superscription. Of the most I would be understood. In prosperous days they swarm, but in adverse withdraw their head, not to be found, though sought. Ye see, O friends, how many evils have enclosed me round. Yet that which was the worst now least afflicts me, blindness, for had I sight confused with shame, how could I once look up or heave the head, who like a foolish pilot have shipwrecked my vessel, trusted to me from above, gloriously rigged, and for a word a tear. Fool, have divulged the secret gift of God to a deceitful woman. Tell me, friends, am I not sung and proverbed for a fool? In every street, do they not say, how well are come upon him his deserts? Yet why? Immeasurable strength they might behold in me, of wisdom nothing more than mean. This with the other should at least have paired, these two proportioned ill drove me transverse. Tax not divine disposal, wisest men have erred, and by bad women have been deceived, and shall again. Pretend they ne'er so wise, deject not so overmuch thyself, who hast of sorrow thy full load besides. Yet truth to say, I oft have heard men wonder why thou shouldst wed Philistine women rather than of thy own tribe fairer or as fair, at least of thy own nation, and as noble. The first I saw at Timnah, and she pleased me, not my parents, that I sought to wed the daughter of an infidel. They knew not that what I motioned was of God. I knew from intimate impulse, and therefore urged the marriage on, that by occasion hence I might begin Israel's deliverance, the work to which I was divinely called. She proving false, the next I took to wife, oh that I never had. Fond wish too late was in the vale of Sorach, Dalilah, that specious monster, my accomplished snare. I thought it lawful from my former act, and the same end, still watching to oppress Israel's oppressors. Of what now I suffer, she was not the prime cause, but I myself, who vanquished with a peal of words a weakness, gave up my fort of silence to a woman. In seeking just occasion to provoke the Philistine, thy country's enemy, thou never wast remiss, I bear thee witness. Yet Israel still serves with all his sons. That fault I take not on me, but transfer on Israel's governors and heads of tribes, who seeing those great acts which God had done singly by me against their conquerors, acknowledged not, or not at all considered deliverance offered. I, on the other side, used no ambition to commend my deeds. The deeds themselves, though mute, spoke loud the doer. But they persisted deaf, and would not seem to count them things worth notice, till at length their lords the Philistines, with gathered powers, entered Judea seeking me, who then safe to the rock of Etham was retired, not flying, but forecasting in what place to set upon them, what advantaged best. Meanwhile the men of Judah, to prevent the harass of their land, beset me round. I willingly, on some conditions came into their hands, and they as gladly yield me. To the uncircumcised a welcome prey, bound with two cords, but cords to me were threads torched with the flame. On their whole host I flew unarmed, and with a trivial weapon felled their choicest youth. They only lived who fled. Had Judah that day joined, or one whole tribe, they had by this possessed the towers of Gath, and lorded over them, whom now they serve. But what more oft in nations grown corrupt, and by their vices brought to servitude, than to love bondage more than liberty, bondage with ease than strenuous liberty, and to despise or envy or suspect whom God hath of his special favor raised as their deliverer, if he aught begin, how frequent to desert him, and at last to heap ingratitude on worthiest deeds. Thy words to my remembrance bring how Succoth and the fort of Penuel their great deliverer contemned, the matchless Gideon in pursuit of Midian and her vanquished kings, and how ingrateful Ephraim had dealt with Jephthah, who by argument not worse than by his shield and spear defended Israel from the Ammonite. Had not his prowess quelled their pride, in that sore battle, when so many died, without reprieve adjudged to death, for want of well-pronouncing shibboleth. Of such examples add me to the roll. Me easily indeed mine may neglect, but God's proposed deliverance not so. Just are the ways of God, and justifiable to men, unless there be who think not God at all. If any be, they walk obscure. For of such doctrine never was there school, but the heart of the fool, and no man therein doctor but himself. Yet more there be who doubt his ways not just, as to his own edicts found contradicting, then give the reins to wandering thought, regardless of his glory's diminution, till by their own perplexities involved they ravel more, still less resolved, but never find self-satisfying solution. And if they would confine the interminable, and tie him to his own prescript, who made our laws to bind us, not himself, and hath full right to exempt whomso it pleases him by choice, from national obstruction without taint of sin or legal debt, for with his own laws he can best dispense. He would not else who never wanted means, nor in respect of the enemy just cause, to set his people free, have prompted this heroic Nazarite, against his vow of strictest purity, to seek in marriage that fallacious bride, unclean, unchaste. Down reason, then, at least vain reasonings down, though reason here aver, that moral verdict quits her of unclean, unchaste was subsequent, her stain not his. But see, here comes thy reverend sire, with careful step, locks white as down. Old Manoah, advise forthwith how thou oughtst receive him. Ay me, another inward grief awaked with mention of that name renews the assault. Manoah. Brethren and men of Dan, for such ye seem, though in this uncouth place, if old respect, as I suppose, towards your once gloried friend, my son now captive, hither hath informed your younger feet, while mine cast back with age came lagging after, say if he be here. As signal now in low dejected state, as erst in highest, behold him where he lies. O miserable change! Is this the man, that invincible Samson, far renowned, the dread of Israel's foes, who, with a strength equivalent to angels, walked their streets, none offering fight, whose single combatant dulled their armies, ranked in proud array, himself an army, now unequal match to save himself against a coward armed at one spear's length. O ever-failing trust in mortal strength, and oh, what not in man, deceivable and vain! Nay, what thing good prayed for, but often proves our woe, our bane? I prayed for children, and thought barrenness in wedlock a reproach. I gained a son, and such a son as all men hailed me happy, who would be now a father in my stead. O wherefore did God grant me my request, and as a blessing with such pomp adorned? Why are his gifts desirable to tempt our earnest prayers, then given with solemn hand as graces draw a scorpion's tail behind? For this did the angel twice descend? For this ordained thy nurture, holy as of a plant, select and sacred, glorious for a while, the miracle of men, then in an hour ensnared, assaulted, overcome, led bound, thy foes' derision, captive, poor, and blind, into a dungeon thrust to work with slaves. Alas, methinks whom God hath chosen once to worthiest deeds, if he through frailty err, he should not so o'erwhelm, and as a thrall subject him to so foul indignities, be it but for honor's sake of former deeds. Appoint not heavenly disposition, Father. Nothing of all these evils hath befallen me but justly. I myself have brought them on, sole author I, sole cause. If aught seem vile, as vile hath been my folly, who have profaned the mystery of God given me under pledge of vow, and have betrayed it to a woman, a Canaanite, my faithless enemy. This well I knew, nor was at all surprised, but warned by oft experience. Did not she of Timnah first betray me, and reveal the secret wrested from me in her height of nuptial love professed, carrying it straight to them who had corrupted her, my spies and rivals? In this other was there found more faith, who also in her prime of love spousal embraces vitiated with gold, though offered only by the scent, convinced her spurious firstborn treason against me. Thrice she essayed with flattering prayers and sighs, and amorous reproaches, to win from me my capital secret, in what part my strength lay stored, in what part summed, that she might know. Thrice I deluded her, and turned to sport her importunity, each time perceiving how openly and with what impudence she proposed to betray me, and, which was worse than undissembled hate, with what contempt she sought to make me traitor to myself. Yet the fourth time, when mustering all her wiles with blandished parleys, feminine assaults, tongue batteries, she surceased not day nor night to storm me overwatched and wearied out. At times, when men seek most repose and rest, I yielded, and unlocked her all my heart, who with a grain of manhood well resolved might easily have shook off all her snares. But foul effeminacy held me yoked, her bond-slave. O indignity! O blot to honor and religion! Servile mind rewarded well with servile punishment. The base degree to which I now am fallen. These rags, this grinding, is not yet so base as was my former servitude, ignoble, unmanly, ignominious, infamous, true slavery, and that blindness worse than this, that saw not how degenerately I served. I cannot praise thy marriage choices, son, rather approved them not, but thou didst plead divine impulsion prompting how thou mightst find some occasion to infest our foes. I state not that, this I am sure, our foes found soon occasion thereby to make thee their captive, and their triumph thou the sooner temptation foundst, or overpotent charms, to violate the sacred trust of silence deposited within thee, which to have kept tacit was in thy power. True, and thou bearest enough and more the burden of that fault. Bitterly hast thou paid, and still art paying, that rigid score. A worse thing yet remains. This day the Philistines a popular feast here celebrate in Gaza, and proclaim great pomp and sacrifice, and praises loud to Dagon, as their god, who hath delivered thee, Samson, bound and blind into their hands. Them out of thine, who slewest them many a slain, so Dagon shall be magnified, and God, besides whom is no God, compared with idols, disglorified, blasphemed, and had in scorn by the idolatrous rout amidst their wine, which to have come to pass by means of thee, Samson, of all thy sufferings think the heaviest, of all reproach the most with shame that ever could have befallen thee and thy father's house. Father, I do acknowledge and confess that I this pomp have brought to Dagon, and advanced his praises high among the heathen round. To God have brought dishonor, obloquy, and oped the mouths of idolists and atheists, have brought scandal to Israel, diffidence of God, and doubt in feeble hearts, prepense enough before to waver or fall off and join with idols, which is my chief affliction, shame and sorrow, the anguish of my soul that suffers not mine eye to harbor sleep or thoughts to rest. This only hope relieves me, that the strife with me hath end. All the contest is now twixt God and Dagon. Dagon hath presumed, me overthrown, to enter lists with God, his deity comparing and preferring, before the God of Abraham. He, be sure, will not connive or linger thus provoked, but will arise and his great name assert. Dagon must stoop, and shall ere long receive such a discomfit as shall quite despoil him of all these boasted trophies won on me, and with confusion blank his worshippers.